My Gavanen Melunin and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galajerthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, who has not been pulling his weight the past month. And welcome back to another faction overview. This time, of course, as predicted in the end of the last episode, the Northern Dúnedain. Now, before I crack on with the Northern Dúnedain, allow me to just say that in my own, outside of YouTube life, I've purchased a new monitor, PC monitor, and it's a lot better. Now, that obviously has no effect on the recording, except that I've always had NVIDIA set to record at the in-game resolution. And, of course, now my in-game resolution is now 2560 by 1440, and thus you should, hopefully, I've watched it back and I think it's all right, I think you should see a boost in the quality of the recordings from here on out, because they're now recording at a higher quality, which means they're going to be much larger to upload. But I just wanted to say that in a video, so there is that. Additionally, given that I've got a very powerful graphics card, and now I have a screen that can actually utilize that, I decided to turn all of the effects back on and as high as to maximum as possible. So shadows are on, which is most noticeable, I think, in the battle map. But you should note that there's some various effects knocking around. I did turn bloom off, though, because I don't really like bloom. But I'm amazed at my, obviously Mirkwood is known to be the only area that really slows down the screen, as you can see it doing there. But on my laptop, when I first started modding, when I was first in the modding team, I played the game on a laptop, and Mirkwood would practically crash my game. It used to move so slowly across it when I had shadows turned on. And now I can just whistle past it, so that's all very good. Anywho, so just a side note, hopefully the video quality will improve, so I hope. Anywho, let's crack on with the Northern Dúnedain then. So the size of your domain and your starting army. Well, the size of your domain is only two. Dúnedain and Ostsul, the village of Amundsul. Well, really, the village linked to Amundsul. Those are your two starting towns, and nothing more, nothing less. And in terms of armies, you have got a few hidden players, but in your capital, you've got your chieftain, Aragorn, of course, with 2 units of Dúnedain Rangers. Do note this is one of the most common words that people always flag other people up on, and so I don't like to say, oh, it should be said this way, but do note that it is Dúnedain and not Dúnedain, as if you are eating them. You're dining on the Duna. That's the pronunciation of it. So it is Northern Dúnedain and not Northern Dúnedain. Just a side note. The army you get in Ostsul is Arafor, and he comes with 1 unit of Dúnedain Wardens and another unit of the Rangers. And then further up here to the north, in a fort between Dead Man's Dyke and Numinas, is Hervagil, yes. And he comes with some Woodland Hunters, 2 more units of Dúnedain Rangers and 2 more units of Wardens. Of course, his army has a clear choice to make. Do you go left or do you go right? As we'll talk about more in a moment. But you do have someone else as well. The bannerman of the Northern Dúnedain. There he is. Halbarad of the North, protecting the Sarn Ford. Not very well, because Captain Aronath and some raiders are moving across the river there. But Halbarad of the North, defender of the Shire, is down there on the borders of the Shire. Well, actually, Brathor of the Dúnedain is the Shire defender.
As if they were my own, friend.
But he belongs to Bree, and he's buggering off, so it's up to Halbarad. So that's your army. Not very large at all. You have to make some critical decisions in the early game as the Dúnedain, but we'll come to that in a moment. So your leader in your capital, well, Dúnedain is your capital city. It does start the game as a village. That is correct. It is a village. But it already has 977 people and it only needs 1,200 to go up. So it's only a village for a very short time. But do note that it is actually a village. So in 0.5 and I think in 1.2, Dúnedain was a large city, possibly even a huge city. Even though on the campaign map, it used to look like a ring of tents. It was actually a huge city. Well, now it actually is a ring of tents on the battle map as well. And so do watch out, though, because in the very early stages of the game, your capital is easily taken. Your leader is, of course, Chieftain Aragorn, and your diplomat, comes from Dúnedain, and I believe... No, yeah, it comes over there, sorry. It comes from the watchtower of Amundsul. That's where your diplomat comes from. Do note... I'll get onto that in a second. In terms of your family tree as well, there's twofold I want to show this. Number one, because your faction heir is actually not of age yet, so if Aragorn does die, then you're in real trouble. And Halbarad is the only other male in your family tree, and he's even connected through fake roots. But in order to give the Dúnedain their own set of unique portraits so that they don't share them with the Rohirrim, it means that all of the death portraits are these death stones, gravestones. That is not a bug. That is intended. So if anybody dies, they'll be displayed as a cairn rather than as a dead image. And that's just, unfortunately, a limitation to the engine. It's the only way to get Dúnedain with unique portraits. But while we're on this kind of family tree aspect of the campaign, that's a point to note. The Dúnedain in version 2.1 and 2.2, whichever one you're playing, 2.2 is not out yet at the date of this video, which is, I recorded this on the 31st of March 2018. But anyway, in 2.1 and 2.2, which are the difference between the two is only really bug fixes. The Dúnedain have unique portraits. So everyone that comes of age into your family tree or into your family will have a unique Dúnedain portrait. And they look very, very good. So no longer do you have Rohirrim portraits, even though you have a Rohirrim background. Or you have a Wildmen background, actually, don't you? Because you are Wildmen. Right, so Rebel expansion then. Well, your Council of Elders, or whatever it is, the people that issue you missions, at the start of this turn, I got a mission to take Tir Thuin. So they're very keen for you to move in and take there. But speaking of Rebel expansion in general, you have other than Dorwinion, you're one of the nations that have the most options. Bree, Northern Dúnedain, and Dorwinion, as you can see from the map, all have plenty of choices. You can go south, you can go west, you could even go east, you can even go north, you can go further west, you can go further south. There are so many rebel provinces in Eriador that the choice is yours. But the real key choice in terms of rebel expansion, and we'll cover it here, is do you go to Annúminas or do you go to Dead Man's Dyke? Now, the rebel garrisons have been made a bit weaker, so you can still just about take both, but it will really harm your your army size there. And do note, of course, that Angmar are already at Athelin after the turn 1 auto expansion, so taking Dead Man's Dyke will border them, which means they'll flood in and they'll be knocking on your door. I mean, there even is Hoonvorn himself coming for you, the Wraith of Angmar. So the distinction is very clear. Dead Man's Dyke is obviously a castle, or not obviously, but it's a stronghold. And it can be upgraded by you, the Northern Dúnedain, into the next tier above, which repairs it and gives it gates. Or you can take Annúminas, which already has gates, but is a huge city. So Dead Man's Dyke is, of course, more military-based, and Annúminas is more economy-based. And that's the choice to make. And the reason I say that's a choice is because if you go for Annúminas, by the time you've got it, Angmar will almost certainly be arriving at Dead Man's Dyke, and even Bree might be having a go. Whereas if you go for Dead Man's Dyke and you take it, exactly the same problem. Angmar will then arrive, and you won't have troops to spare to send over to take Annúminas. So it can be done to take both, and you might get lucky and you might be able to get both, but it's worthwhile taking one and assuming that is your strategy. I personally would suggest going for Dead Man's Dyke first, because if Angmar do beat you to it, that's very, very annoying. And Annúminas can always be mopped up later. But Annúminas, of course, if you take Dead Man's Dyke, Annúminas is likely to fall to Bree or Linden or even Ered Luin before it falls to Angmar, which is the worst nations for it to fall to because you're allied to almost all of them. As we can now seamlessly blend into, your neighbours and your diplomacy, you are allied to Imladris and Bree, but you are therefore on very good terms with Linden and Ered Luin, and both of them might well seek an alliance with you very early doors. So they could be allies soon enough. You start the game at war with Angmar, but Angmar only. The Misty Mountains might come and try and take a piece of your green pie, but they do have their hands full, of course, with Imladris right on their border, which they constantly try and do things with. But the biggest enemy for them is the Anduin, who they of course, border. They throw most of their weight into the Anduin and, indeed, into Khazad-dûm, which, incidentally, has a lovely new CSM model there created by the Elite Dwarf, which looks very nice. But they throw most of theirs into Anduin, so they might leave you alone. And indeed, the two campaigns that I've played, the Northern Dúnedain, admittedly on version 1 or 1.2 or whatever it was, the Misty Mountains completely left me alone. So then you can kind of play the game as if they don't really exist. But with the introduction of Dol Bryn as a town, might give them a bit more reason to be a bit more aggressive, so do watch out for that. Of course, your actual neighbours then, key neighbours, are the ones to the south, Dúnedain. These are the big question mark in your campaign. But further to their southwest, of course, is Enid Wythe. Then we go through Linden and Ered Luin there. Bree, of course, border you already, and Angmar to your north. And those are your neighbours, and that's your diplomacy situation. So economy and buildings then. Well, the Northern Dúnedain start, as I say, as a Wildmen faction. But if we go to your building browser, you'll see that as you get into the later tiers of all your buildings, you then kind of find your Gondorian heritage, and everything then suddenly takes a more Gondorian theme. Hold on, I'm in the wrong one to show you all of this, really. So as you can see, well, you do get 5 levels of blacksmithing now, which you didn't previously, but you do now. Your master builders are there. You get the carpenter's hut, the master carpenter's hut, and then you jump up to a mason's guild house, which is shared with Gondor and Dol Amroth. Standard Wildmen ports there. Roads, you are one of the only few nations that get to build great roads. And indeed, Amun Sul, or the province of the Weather Hills, and Bree already have a great road, as you can see, which makes movement through this region very easy. But unfortunately, of course, it connects to the north, so it makes movement for Angmar very easy as well. So do watch out for that. But there is quite nicely, in one little screenshot, there are the 3 types of roads. So dirt roads, very obvious because they're dirt. And the distinction between stone and great roads is really that this one's thicker and darker than the stone road. But the great roads just do exactly what you'd expect. Faster movement, better trade. They're very, very good to get. In terms of guilds, you can see you've got the Warriors Guild going all the way up to the highest rank. Swordmasters, Royal Swordmasters, and Hall of the Faithful. Giving you experience bonus and melee bonus. You get an Archers Guild as well, of course, because you are the Rangers, famed for your archery. Your highest tier called the Grey Company Guild Hall. You also get the Horse Breeders Guild, because you're a bit of a jack-of-all-trades nation, really, in a weird way. As we'll come to that more in a moment. Bonus to cavalry there. There's your education building. So you get the library and the school to start with, and then you get the proper Gondorian University at the end, giving you, again, a melee weapon bonus, which is nice. Castle and town halls, of course. There's the garrison quarters. It doesn't look Gondorian because unfortunately it has to be shared by all the Wildmen. So that's just the Wildmen garrison, which is how you get actual garrison troops, by building the armory, of course. So in terms of economy and your buildings and everything, you aren't restricted in any way. The Northern Dúnedain can build everything. All 4 tiers of cities above village, and both tiers of castles above keeps. So no restrictions whatsoever. And indeed, you get the extra addition that you can upgrade Dead Man's Dyke to become Fornost. You get the extra tier above Stronghold, which very few nations can. But that's only in the Northern Downs, the region of the Northern Downs. You can only upgrade that there. But you also get the option to upgrade Tharbad. You're one of the nations that can do that. And should you make it all the way to Gondor, you can upgrade Osgiliath as well. So plenty of building choices and options for you. So then we come to scripts. And of course, there is only one major script for the Northern Dúnedain, and it isn't even a script. It is all done with coding. And that is the Beacon of Hope recruitment system. And the basic premise behind this is that the Northern Dúnedain's goal is very much the freedom of the whole world. Aragorn is, of course, a beacon of hope for all the free peoples, because he is the only person able to ascend the throne of both the ruined kingdom of Arnor and the falling kingdom of Gondor. People rally behind him. Sauron is afraid of him. He fears what Aragorn could become. And with the help of Gandalf, we'll talk about in a moment, the Northern Dúnedain are very much the figurehead, the spearhead, the leaders of the free world. I absolutely loathe to say it, but no, I'm not even going to bloody go there. They are just the beacon of hope. And what this recruitment system means is that the Northern Dúnedain can recruit units from every single human nation. Only in those nations' starting towns, and with some exceptions. So, for example, the idea is not that you conquer the world and enslave their peoples, but rather, by the time you arrive at the rest of the human kingdoms, they have probably fallen, and it is then up to you to reclaim them, and in so doing, the troops of those nations then rise up and fight with you. And by every human nation, I mean every human nation. I will show you the roster between the campaign and the battle map side. I'll give you a quick view. of what units you can actually train. I mean really quick, I'll just scroll through them all, but you can then see exactly what you get. But basically every human nation you can train some of their troops. So that is all the script is. As you progress around the world, you will be able to train other people's units. But part of the reason for that is because the Dúnedain units themselves, the core Dúnedain units, so like Dúnedain Wardens, Cardinal Sentinels, these kind of units, they can only be trained in your starting regions, and even then they have even further restrictions, as you can see here. So Cardinal units only come from historic Cardinal, which is kind of South Eriador as an overview. Dúnedain units as a whole only really come from central Eriador. The Arthedain units only come from Arthedain, which is these 4 provinces you see on the screen. Maybe some additions elsewhere just to make them a bit more available. Ruidour units only come from Ruidour. So your core units, your main military strength, your best units, only come from their historically accurate locations. Historically accurate in inverted commas. A lot of people moan about which regions we have included as which nations, but don't worry about that. Outside of this core region, so say for example you picked up your whole army and you set down in Rawburg, there are some units that you can train that you can train everywhere except your core regions, and these units are normally preceded with the word militia, and I'll show you those on the second half of the video. But otherwise, outside of your core regions, you are relying on the local populace to actually be your army. So it's also reflecting the fact that the Northern Dúnedain are also one of the least populous peoples in Middle-earth. Dare I say, there are even less Dúnedain than there are elves. They are really retreated, defeated, beaten, and rising up is going to be difficult for them. So instead they rely on Aragorn's prowess and the promise of freedom to bring in peoples from the lands that they liberate. So that's where your main army will be, other nations' troops. So you can train quite a lot of them. Do also note that, sorry, I should have spoken about this in the other section, in the building section, that because you are a wild men nation, or actually more accurately because you're the Dúnedain, your recruitment is again unique in that only one building does all of your recruitment. So, yeah, you get the Dúnedain encampment, and then the second tier, the Dúnedain barracks, trains then all of your elites, as you can see. So there are actually only 2 tiers, and there is not an archery range or a stables. There is just one training building, and it has 2 tiers, and that is it. Your troops train very easily, but by God are they rare. You'll have a really, really small army, quite a lot. And then the militia barracks is where you will train the, as I say, local militia, local archers, and then once you upgrade that to the second tier, you get the militia captains and the mounted captains. They also have a particularly Arnorian theme to them, as you can see there. So those 4 units are the only units that you can actually train everywhere, except your heartlands. And then all of the units that come out of the encampment building can be trained only in your heartlands. So as you can see, your very best units like Dúnedain Blade Masters, Men-at-Arms, Steel Bowmen, all the Arthedain units, they only come from this core heartland. So the only other script then that you need to worry about is, of course, Gandalf. Gandalf will join you at a certain point into the campaign, but we have since tweaked it since version 2.1, because basically you get Gandalf the Grey, and he spawns with quite a nice unit of cavalry, which is always OP. However, if Gandalf dies, he respawns as Gandalf the White with one of the game's best cavalry units. So a lot of people would often kill Gandalf on purpose just so that they could get Gandalf the White and then cheese the game with him because of how outrageous he is. But we've since tweaked it so that Gandalf spawns a bit later into your campaign than he used to do, and then there's actually quite a delay between getting Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. So you can't just get Gandalf at turn 15 or whatever it was, get him killed on turn 16, and then have a really late game elite cavalry unit by turn 20 running around the map. It's very unlikely you'll get Gandalf the White before about turn 70 if you have purposefully killed him yourself now. So we've nerfed him a bit. But you do get Gandalf. He joins you, he fights with you, and as I say, if he dies, he comes back as the White. If he then dies again, you've lost him. Ilúvatar only gave him 1 extra chance. I think that's all of the scripts to mention for the Northern Dúnedain. I've already covered Osgiliath and Tharbad, and indeed Gandalf. So we can just then move on to significant map changes. Well, TATW, I've already spoken of as a map change. These are map changes from 0.5 throughout. So if they were covered in 1.2, I apologise, but going all the way back to 0.5, which is when I think I did the last overviews. I could be wrong. I think I am wrong. But anyway, since the last episode, TATW is new. Dol Bryn is new. Up in the northern regions, Gobadrine and Fuirost have been broken up. Bari Donionak used to be this whole region, and it's been split up. Obviously, there are no regions now in Forest Shell. It's completely gone, because they were just complete waste of time regions. They had no purpose. One of the Shire provinces has gone from 0.5. The one that was here at Sarnford has been replaced with a fort. I'm pretty sure that's it. Oh, of course, the major one is that Tharbad is now 2 provinces. Which is a big change. It was always 2 provinces, sorry, but now it is actually Osgiliath on the battle map, which is very nice. So there's that difference as well. I suppose a script that doesn't directly affect you, but sort of does, is the Barrow-wights.
I'm gonna stick you.
If you take Mengelon as a village, you will constantly be attacked by spawning Barrow-wight armies, and they are bloody hard to kill. But when you upgrade it to a town, and then you repair the crypts building, then the Barrow-wights then stop spawning. So you don't really want to take Mengelon until send a spy in, find out if the population's around about 1,100. Then take it, then quickly upgrade it and quickly build the crypts, and you won't be attacked by the Barrow-wights. Do also note that Ilkrun, who's standing there, he actually can't move, so he will not support the town if you attack it. He is locked at that battle map, because each one of these actual barrows is a unique battle map that has the Barrow Downs battle map. If you can fight there, it's very cool, and it's worthwhile. Even if you just send in a scout to attack him, just to see what the battle map looks like, I recommend it. Also, we do well know that in the lore, the Barrow Downs is only the western edge here, and these 3 are actually erroneous. But the battle map is so cool, and the region is just called the Downs, so we just expanded it across. It's just one of those small little tweaks to get a gameplay feature into the game. Another key gameplay feature, this is not a bug. If you are attacked in the village of Ostsul, it will be the Amunsul battle map. As soon as you upgrade it to a town, it then reverts to a normal town and then large town and city, whatever. But when it's attacked when it is a village, it will be Amunsul. And it even explains that here in the building for it. So if Ostsul is a village, the inhabitants will flee to Amunsul if it is attacked. So you will fight the Amunsul battle map if Ostsul is attacked when it's a village, which is very cool. Also, of course, this is actually just a fort, but it is, again, Amunsul. So if you are holding up in this fort and someone attacks you, it fights on the battle map for Amunsul, which is very cool. But we can only do that a few times, again, because of engine limitations, which is why only that one is actually unique. Because in that same vein, and it will cover more in the Rohan video, this fort here behind Edoras has the Dunharrow battle map. Not many people will actually know this, I don't think, but even though it looks like a fort, it is actually Dunharrow. We can't use we can't give it its own customs campaign model because of the way the engine limitations work, but rest assured that that is actually Dunharrow. So do fight there if you like, and you'll fight at Dunharrow, which is a nice little feature. So tips and difficulty then with the Dúnedain. Well, as I've already said, I would suggest going for Dead Man's Dyke, but play it however you wish. I also highly recommend, depending on how easy or hard you want the campaign to be, the Northern Dúnedain used to be a very hard campaign. I'm not so sure that it's all that tricky now because of how elite your troops are, but one of the best things to do is rush Royal Tharbad. Even if Dunland already have it, because Dunland will be out for your blood no matter what. They almost always attack the Northern Dúnedain. But if you can take Royal Tharbad with a reasonable force, you completely shut Dunland down. They have nowhere to go. They do not come all the way around here from Keloniac. It's so far around, the AI just cannot factor it in. They get halfway, and then they think it's actually quicker to go back. They get back and realise they can't walk past you, and they go back again. And they're just caught in an endless loop. So taking Royal Tharbad shuts Dunland down. So if you want a particularly easy campaign, I recommend you take Tharbad, defend it, and then go for Angmar, who will give you some trouble, because they can throw a lot of units at you. and try not to stir up the Misty Mountains. But if you want a hard campaign, let Dunland flood into southern Eriador, let the Misty Mountains move in on you, and then start a war with all three, and you'll realise how hard the game can be. But it is still a reasonably challenging campaign if you feel that you're relatively new to the series or your skills just aren't that great. But if you are a veteran player or you're very experienced with the Total War games, then none of the factions are hard. So I apologise for that. But if you are one of the more middling players like myself, then the Dúnedain can be a challenge. And if Dunland, as I say, if Dunland do get through and they do start knocking on your door, you will have some trouble. But that, I think... oh, I didn't do the bodyguards, did I? Sorry. So there is Chieftain Aragorn. He actually does look like Aragorn, as you might hope. And of course, he has the Grey Company as his bodyguard. They are a mounted cavalry archer unit, and they are only his bodyguard, no one else's. So you don't actually see them very much. Arafor over here, that's what a standard Dúnedain general looks like, and he has the standard Dúnedain bodyguards, which we shall see in the second half of this video. I believe Halbarad has, indeed, Dúnedain Steel Bowman, so he's a solid archer unit, very, very good. And Hervigil again up in the north, I believe he just has the standard bodyguard. Yes, he does, there we are. Apparently he's got a Dúnedain Lawmaster with him, that's always nice. But the standard captain for the Dúnedain then looks like that. So that's your general, that's your captain, and of course Aragorn gets his own unique look over there. Alright, so now I'll just quickly break to the custom battle selection screen to just run through all of the units that the Beacon of Hope system gives you, and then we'll go over to the battle map. So I shall see you in just a moment. Welcome then, so let's have a little look through. As you can see, there are bloody loads of them. So you get units from Dunland coming from there, you get units from Enedwaith, those ones there, there's more from Enedwaith there, there's the Rudau Pikemen, you get Dorwinian units, you get Dalian units, you get Candish warriors, you get Southron units, Runic units, there's quite a lot from Gondor that you do actually get. As you can see, get some Lammen clansmen there. There's more Rudau. And yes, if you take the city of Imladris, you actually get Imladris units, but only sword and bow, Quendi. It's only a little nice little nod. They're not going to turn the tide of the war or anything for you. There's some of the Breland units you can get. There's some Anduin units. There's some Ardenaim units that you have turned to the side of good, fighting for the Valar again. More Gondorian units, more Dalian units. Dol Amroth coming in further down the bottom there. There's some Rohirric units there as well. There's some of your later units coming in. A lot from Gondor. You really do get a lot from Gondor. And that's correct. You get Orthanc Guard if you take Isengard, because of course they are actually Dunlendings. And again, they have decided that even though they've sided with Saruman, he's been defeated. And it's now death by the hands of the Dúnedain or death by the hands of Sauron. The only hope is to overthrow Sauron, so they've joined with the Dúnedain. So that's why you get Orthanc there. There's some more Dol Amroth units, more Rohirrim. Some Stur units. You come down into the archers now. So those are the nations that you get them from. As I say, every human nation. Orthanc sentries are in there as well. More rangers and things down the bottom. And then a ton of cavalry from all the different nations. And more runic units. More just units from all over the place, really. So just plenty of units. So Rune, Khand, Umbar, or Ardenaim, sorry, Harad, Gondor, Dol Amroth, Anduin, Dorwinian, Dale, Imladris, Bree, Enedwaith, and Dunland. Those are all the nations. You don't get any Dwarven units, you don't get any mainstream elves, you only get those 2 Quendi from Imladris, and you don't, of course, get any Orc units or anything like that. So that's an overview of all of those units, but now we'll actually jump to the battle map and just look at the Dúnedain's core units. Welcome then to the battle map side of the video. So as I say, this is just to focus on the Dúnedain units alone. And the only additional unit I've included that is trained by others is the Tharbad Royal Guard, because I think they're the Northern Dúnedain are the nation most likely to train them, so I've included them in this. But do note that they're available for Gondor and Dol Amroth as well, and Bree if you side with the Dúnedain. So I've split it into 2 halves. On the right hand side are the Dúnedain units, the core units. These ones are only available in the core areas. Basically Eriador, and even then broken down some more. And then the 4 units on the left over here are the units that are available everywhere else. So these ones are actually way more readily available. About 3 times as many locations can train those units as can train these. But you will spend most of the campaign using these because they are your best. The barracks event is that line there. So quite an actually late game faction, the Northern Dúnedain. Oh, very late game, really. There's quite a few archers there, but do note there's also archer cavalry, and of course even your militia units get 2 extra archers. So even though it doesn't look all that archer based, if these units were combined in with these units, then you've got 5 archers straight out the bat. So an awful lot going on. Do note as well your bodyguards are archers, both types. And as I say, you've got cavalry archers as well there at the front. So a lot of archers, but otherwise an overall very rounded roster. So let us then start with the Cardellani Sentinels, or Cardellan Sentinels. Cardellan Sentinels are the closest thing you're going to get to militia. And to give you an idea of how much you're going to outperform and outclass Dunland, Enedwaith, Bree, Angmar, Misty Mountains, basically all the nations around you. The Cardellan Sentinels are your entry-level unit, and they have a 13 total defense and a 7 attack. If you remember back to the Enedwaith video, the entry-level units for Enedwaith are more along the lines of 2-2-2 across the board. So we are significantly superior to them in almost all forms. But Cardellan units only come from Cardellan, so they're not actually available in all of your core regions. They're only available in the southern ones. So these units are the most likely to be fighting against Dunland and Enedwaith. Cardellan Sentinels are just solid swordmen, and they get the ability to hide anywhere. Average morale response. They don't like fighting in the winter, and they don't like fighting in deserts, but they are okay in grassland, and they're unaffected by woodland. So those are your Cardellan Sentinels, just sword and board with the ability to ambush. They are supported at this earlier tier. It's difficult with the Dúnedain because all these units are all available at the same time, but some of them are slightly better than the others, but not enough to merit a second tier, so it's just tricky. But anyway, they're supported with the Cardellan Archers, who can also hide anywhere, a feature of a lot of Dúnedain units. They get a 4 melee attack, 4 missile, and a 9 defense. So solid archers, very good entry-level archers, and they're solid melee support as well when their arrows run out. Their range is only 170 meters, which isn't that great. Their average accuracy with 24 missiles. And then the third one, rounding out the Cardellan units, are the Riders.
Go lightly.
Go lightly. The Cardellan Riders are standing over there in their triumphant green, bearing the regalia of the reunited kingdom of Gondor and Arnor. They are adept at hiding in woods, but they can't hide anywhere because they're cavalry. Their charge is 6, which is pretty damn tasty. They've got a spear, which gives them another bonus in the charge. But do note they don't have a secondary weapon by the looks of it. So once they've finished charging, you should run them away and charge again, which is true of all cavalry, really. But this one especially is not going to do that well in melee. They get a bonus against wargs, though, which is very nice. So they will actually fight slightly better against wargs. The 3 early game Dúnedain units that you get, let's start with the Wardens, are the Wardens. These are spear units, and do note that, whilst they are Dúnedain, so a 7 attack and a 16 defense for an early tier unit, with excellent stamina and that can shield wall, good morale response, bonus against mounts and beasts. They are still spearmen, so dedicated shock infantry, for example, or even just sword and board infantry will actually kill these if given the chance. So don't think that they're going to solve all of your problems. It's not up until you get up into the Blade Masters that you have a unit that might solve all your problems, or indeed even the Arthedain units, the beasts over there. But the Wardens will do very well in the early game, but they're not going to do substantially well in the late game. And if you do take on the Blue Mountains or Linden, then they'll just laugh these guys off. So whilst you are really very good, remember that your early tier units are still early tier units, and late game units of most nations will handle them with ease. But supported in the early tier, of course, the most famous unit really for the Dúnedain are their Rangers.
Lie low in the trees.
Lie low in the trees. They can hide anywhere. They get a bonus in woods and anyway. Excellent stamina, 6 missile attack. They only don't like fighting in deserts. They have 32 missiles with a 220 meter range with a very high accuracy. 12 total defense and a 7 melee attack. They will slaughter so many enemies in the early game with their bows. They are going to be deadly ranged warriors. They are very good with their sword, though. Don't write them off with a sword. With a melee attack of 7 and a 12 defense, that puts them on par with the Cardellan Sentinels, who are a dedicated melee force. So Dúnedain Rangers are your really staple go-to unit in the early game. You should train them whenever and wherever you can. And then finally, you're also supported here by the Scouts, who are your only Horse Archer unit. Horse Archers are very useful because you can shoot your arrows and run away. They're not as good in terms of missile attack damage as the Rangers, and their defense is not that great. Their charge bonus is only 5, and they don't have a spear. So they're very good Horse Archers, but they're pretty average cavalry after that. So don't expect miracles from them once they've run out of arrows. On the... No, we'll do those all as one at the end. So after the barracks event, then in your core regions, the main units that you're going to be training, or the main unit that will come available to you, are twofold: the Dúnedain Blade Masters and their cavalry counterpart, the Dúnedain Cavalry. So the Blade Masters used to be available before the barracks event, but they were pushed back to after it, and they became dedicated shock infantry, within a 14 attack and a charge bonus of 8, total defense of 16. Very, very high, very nice indeed. Very good at killing things. They are good morale response. Do note though, as I've said in many videos, the bulk of their defense is in armor, which means armor piercing units particularly will have a very nice time killing these people because they have no shield and a relatively low defense skill in comparison to their overall defense stat. So just watch out for armor piercing. And they're supported by Dúnedain Cavalry. This is the bodyguard unit for Gandalf the Grey, by the way, so if you're interested. And the Dúnedain Cavalry are just a really good cavalry. A 22 defense is incredible. 7 attack, 12 charge. That's incredible for a cavalry unit, is what I mean. They can form a wedge. They might charge without orders, though, so they're impetuous morale response. Their morale is still only good, though. The Dúnedain are willing to fight, but their low numbers affects their morale in some regard. They get a bonus against other horses as well. Not against wargs, but against other horses. So they're dedicated cavalry killers if you come up against maybe Dunland's late game cav, or if you turn on... Only really good nations have cav, to be honest. Or if you're fighting, I don't know, Harad or Khand, then they'll help you there. Secondary attack is 9, which is actually better. So once you've done the initial charge, they will then happily finish off the enemy with their swords. So a very good cavalry unit. The Dúnedain, to be honest, could easily be either an elite cav unit or an archer unit. Or indeed even an elite heavy infantry unit. They really do everything well. This isn't a jack of all trades, master of none. This is a jack of all trades, master of all kind of faction. They're really good. But those are the first units you're going to get, but you need to jump up and you need to jump through extra hoops to get to the next tier. So you don't get too many after the barracks event. Only 2 extra units join you. You then need to do some more dedicated upgrades to get to the next tier, the elite tier. So we'll start with the Tharbad Royal Guard. Tharbad Royal Guard, do note they look like this before you've upgraded them, and then they look like that when you upgrade them. So there is a difference there. They are pike units, and they're damned good ones at that. Of course, they come from Tharbad, as the name would suggest, and they require the rebuilt bridge of Tharbad. You can train them in both Royal Tharbad and normal Tharbad, or East and West, and they're really good pikemen, they really are. 17 total defense is outrageous for a pike unit. An attack of 6, which is also very, very good. Charge bonus of 5 is also rather nice, so if they are running in, they're doing well. North or South Tharbad, they're not actually called that. Royal Tharbad or normal Tharbad, but that's not a very good name mentioning, is it? Their morale again is only good. Their morale response is only good. They get a bonus against all mounts, as you'd expect. They get a bonus in forests and snow, but they actually don't fight as well in the desert or in the grassland, because they are used to fighting in cities and they don't like being out on the open plain. They are primarily used to guard the bridge of Tharbad, and they don't like leaving it, so they get a negative to that. But as you can see, they have Arnorian armor style, so if you're really missing Arnor, then just play late game Dúnedain and you'll get all the Arnor you could ever want. It really does look an awful lot better, the graphics, with this new screen, I must confess. Everything's looking much crisper. Then they look very nice when they upgrade. In fact, they look like them when they upgrade, but without the gold lining. So very nice indeed. So those are the Tharbad Royal Guard. Now the next 2 units, the Dúnedain Men-at-Arms, don't require Arthedain. They just require any Dúnedain region. So they are, if you will, generic Dúnedain elites. So they're available in all of the Dúnedain regions. They're not restricted to Arthedain. And they're just really good sword and board warriors. As you can see, they've got a sword and they've got a shield. Their attack is 8, defense of 22, good morale response. They're just, as I say, solid sword fighters in the later stages of the game. But they are nothing on the Arthedain Knights. By the blood of Arnor! Now, these guys really are very good. They inspire nearby troops. They can make a shield wall and they frighten enemy infantry. Their attack is 11. Their charge is 5 and their defense is 29. They are massively putting the Dúnedain men-at-arms to shame. But, of course, they only come from Arthedain, which is only, I believe, as I say, 4 regions. And you need to upgrade your barracks in all 4 regions to even get them. And the chances are you won't do that in those 4 regions because you'll be tight for money most of the game. Now, they are the first unit to actually get very good morale, and it is locked, so they will not run away unless you tell them to. They will fight to the death, and by Jove, are they good warriors. They really are amazing fighters. If you can get them, get them. They really help your army. We'll go over to the archers next. So the next one is a unit that was requested so much, and they are the steel bowmen.
Keep your senses.
Dúnedain Steel Bowmen are just a direct upgrade of Dúnedain Rangers. So, as you can see, defense of 20 versus 12. A melee attack of 14 versus 7. We're basically just doubling everything. And a missile attack of 8. They're also the Dúnedain's stake placing unit, so you get a little bonus there. And they frighten nearby enemy infantry as well, which is very nice. So they really are solid fighters. Their morale is excellent. Their morale response is good. They get a bonus in forest, grassland and snow. They don't like fighting in the deserts. They get a bonus against wargs, and they have exceptional, basically they have almost elven elite level accuracy with a 230 meter range and a 32 missile. They are, as I say, a direct upgrade of Dúnedain Rangers. But as this lists here, we went for this because there's just so many places you can actually recruit them, but they are only recruited in key Dúnedain heritage locations. So, places like Anuminas, Fornost, Amun Sul, your capital city, Tharbad, Orthanc, Minas Tirith, Minas Morgul, the Black Gate, places like that. They're available relatively sporadically around the map, and in terms of the overall map, they're really rare. But because you will most likely follow a path that follows the old Dúnedain trail, if you will, so starting in Arnor, going through the old lands of Calanarthon, which is now Rohan, into Gondor, and then into Mordor, you're likely to come across them quite a lot because that's a kind of line of where they're available, following the Great North-South Road. So they're not actually as rare as you might think, and they're really very good. But they do cost 1,400 gold coins, so they're a bit of an investment. Now, the other unit, one of the game's 3 best cavalry units, up there with the Lok Inas Rim and the Swan Knights of Dol Amroth, are the Arthedain Royal Guard. And these are the gentlemen that Gandalf the White spawns with when he comes back. And my god, are they good. They really are blisteringly good. 9 attack, 14 charge with a 30 defense. That's the key. Cavalry that charge into units do actually take damage. The game does actually have a reciprocal damage effect, so you do often lose units when you commit a charge. But with a 30 defense, you're not losing many of these, I can assure you. They can't hide at all for their sins, though, but they do frighten nearby enemies, and they inspire your troops, and they're good against other mounts. And not just other mounts, they're good against wargs and horses. Now, they don't get a bonus against beasts, though, only wargs and horses. But again, their morale is locked, so they will not run away unless you tell them to. A secondary attack is 12, so they're almost as good as the Arthedain Knights fighting on the with the sword. In fact, they are better. They are one of your... They are basically... I say one of your... They're probably your best unit. But they are very expensive for that pleasure, as I say. Very expensive. I'll touch upon upkeep in a moment as well, just before we go through. But so then, just before we jump to the 4 units that are available outside of the Dúnedain regions, these are your bodyguards. This is your generic bodyguard available the world over. Anyone that comes of age, anyone that is adopted, any men of the hour, they will all have Dúnedain bodyguards. Dúnedain bodyguards are effective against armor with their bows and their axes. In fact, they are your only armor-piercing unit. The only thing the Dúnedain seriously lack is anti-armor. So if you do decide to fight the dwarves, you will have a tough time. Same if you turn on Linden or Imladris. You don't have armor piercing except for your bodyguards. Now, I think the steel bowmen might get armor piercing, but I think we actually took it away because the missile damage was so good they just didn't need it. Anyway, the Dúnedain bodyguards certainly are. Armor piercing with both weapon types. Now again, they have locked morale, which means your general will never run away unless you tell him to. which can lead to some awkward situations where your general gets killed. Their accuracy is very high. Their range is 240, the highest on any unit that you get in your roster, and 34 missiles, more than anyone else. They are your best archer unit, but there are only 43 of them as a standard on the largest unit size. So they're very, very small in number. They can easily be surrounded and stunlock killed, so do watch out for that. But using them as surgical killers, assassins if you will, to bring down key enemy units with their arrows and then bring down key units and flanking key units with their axes, they can do really good damage. They are very, very aggressive. One of the best bodyguard units in the game, they really are. Now the Grey Company are Aragorn's only, or they are the bodyguard of Aragorn, and that is all they do, which is why they sound like Aragorn. Because that's the only way to have unique voices. You have to make a unit that is only used by one general, and then you give it that general's voice, and it's the only way to do it. So we kept it for Aragorn because we could, and because it's very iconic, and because he is the beacon of hope. So we thought it had a bit more weight to that.
Middle-earth depends on us.
So the Grey Company in the campaign map will always have a little Aragorn fighting at the back. So it's always him that's talking to you. And they're just really good cavalry archers. 7 missile attack, 11 melee, 7 charge, 18 defense. They get a bonus against other cavalry, which is also very good. Their accuracy is high, 140 meters, which is good for a cavalry archer. They are really good. But again, very low in number. So, but I mean, you hear horror stories of people killing thousands of orcs with just Aragorn alone. So they are massively powerful units and can do an awful lot of damage. So outside of the Dúnedain regions then, you get 4 units. You get local militia, who are just a basic spear unit, 3 attack, 11 defense, 2 charge. They're similar to the stats of the Cardinalin units, but they're just standard defensive spear units. They do upgrade. They get chainmail if you upgrade them in the late stages of the game, but they keep their basic same look. And they're supported by local archers, who are very much your militia. 9 defense, 3 missile, 3 melee. Not as good as the Cardinalin units that they are closest to, in likeness to. They are militia, very much so. Now, they're better than like Wildmen or Orc militia, but they are still very much militia. And in the later stages of the game, they will easily be the first units to die or to break. They'll go quickly. But after the barracks event, you actually get some real solid quality, starting with militia captains. Now, the militia captains do get an armor upgrade as well, and they go from the tabard to the full armor. I believe, anyway, that might actually only be the mounted captains. That might be false information, I apologise. Anyway, if you upgrade them, you can see if they get an armor upgrade or not. They get a 6 melee attack, 5 missile, 15 total defense. So they're about on par, just shy of as good as rangers. So they're not amazing. Their morale is only good, morale response is good. At high accuracy, they're with a range of 190. So they're close to the rangers, but just not as great. So 763 plays 654. So their charge is slightly better than the rangers, but their missile is worse and their melee is worse. Their defense, though, is better. So they will survive a bit longer. And they do actually have a shield. So when they are fighting in melee, they do swap to the shield on their back. And so their archers have a tough time taking them out. And finally, you also get the mounted captains. Cavalry! Who do it as well, I believe, get an upgrade to the more to the plate mail of Arnor. Again, they're just solid cavalry, actually, and they are quite solid cavalry. They will do very well. With a 16 defense, 9 charge bonus, and an attack of 5. They are solid cavalry. Good morale response. They're a nice unit to have. So then a final point just to touch on the upkeep. The Dúnedain have a kind of unique recruit system in that most of their Dúnedain units, which is the core group here, save for the very elites, which is those kind of 3 at the top and the steel bowmen. Everything below that, so everything in these 2 kind of rows here, they all have a really low upkeep. They have quite a high cost. 775, 1100, 850. These are like your militia tier units. We're going in at 850. 930, 725. Like, they're reasonably expensive, but their upkeep is really low. And this is to reflect the fact that the Dúnedain are not a formed up, unified, standing nation. They are roving bands of peoples who live off the land, live in tents. They're constantly moving around, chasing enemies, protecting borders. And so to reflect that, we've given them a very low upkeep. But they have a really slow replenishment time, almost verging on Elven. So like an Elven unit will often take something like 15 to 20 turns before you can train another unit of the same type. And the Dúnedain are the same. So in the barracks event, which kicks in about the 60th turn, you can expect to get about 3 of each unit from each town, and that's it. Most other nations by the 60th turn will have 6, if not more, of each unit from each town. So your units are quite rare and difficult to replace. They cost a lot, but their upkeep is low. So once you've trained them, they won't drain your economy too much, but it can be difficult to train them. But that is only true, as I say, of these first 2 tiers. The elite units have normal upkeeps, and they will really hit you. So do watch out for the Arthedain Royal Guard, costing 1,500, and their upkeep is something like 600. It's outrageous. But it has to be, because otherwise you just train millions of them and then you've won the game. So there we are. So that, I believe, is the Dúnedain roster in pretty much full. So we will do as we always do. Group them, give them over to the AI, and we will start the battle. And I'm willing to take bets on who you wish, on who you believe is up against us. So who is going to be in next week's episode? Speaking of just general progression, a point that won't be pertinent in a months to come, but on the channel in general at the moment, I'm still really in a hiatus with my weekends because of this whole house move, and it's very likely that my channel for the next month and a half will probably only have Ardenaim and overview videos, and it won't be until we can get our house sorted that I can then return to a normal schedule. So if anybody asks or moans in the comments, do just let them know that I'm moving house and it's taking up all my weekends. So I apologise for that, but 3 videos is all I can spare in the week because I'm busy on certain evenings. So that's why at the moment the schedule is very limited, very bare bones. And if you don't like the Ardenaim, it'll be a while before you get to see anything further, and I apologise for that. But it's just everyone goes through these phases, and I'm moving in. I've got to do stuff, so I'm sorry. So, interesting one that we're lined up against here. There's certainly some cavalry that we can see over there. Our cavalry is head off to hit. There's some interesting catapults on the left-hand side there, and there's some more cavalry over this side charging into us. But the troops in the middle have a very black theme, which is a feature of a certain unit type, I would suggest. Oh, apparently they're AI reinforcements now rather than my actual units. So do have a guess. Who do you think next week's episode will be about? And then when I've done a full circle, I'll zoom in and tell you the answer. They had a greenish, dark greenish colouring to their nation, if that helps as well. And if you haven't guessed it, it is, of course, not Mordor. It is Dol Guldur. And there are the Castellans fighting our line there. Our pikemen giving them what for as the thunder of the catapults roars overhead. There's more Castellans fighting there. Cumald's Shadow Knights have hit us over this side, courtesy of Reforged, looking very nice. There are the black units, as I say. The orcs of all nations have a very black theme. There are Dol Guldur scouts fighting in the centre. Black arrows whistling overhead from Cumald's Shadow Rangers with their poison arrows. With the green trails, as you can see on them there. They look very good. Well done, Hummingbird. Not in a condescending way, like in a genuine, you've cracked it. You did what I could not. You can actually now see the trail. Oh, that could be just because I've turned... Oh, of course! I turned all of the... For some reason, all of my graphics settings were on low, because for some weird reason I assumed it helped speed up turn times. I don't know why. And it's been that way for years. And now I've actually turned everything up. That might well be why you can now clearly see the arrow trails. Grey Company keeping away from the enemy over there. There's some Orc Raiders chasing down our Arthedain Royals, who are up against Shadow Knights. Shadow Knights taking on Arthedain Royals there. Silver on silver. Black steeds all... Oh, our general's gone down. There's more Shadow Knights. They bloody love those Shadow Knights, don't they? Troll catapults were the interesting ones I was talking of. Fighting over there. Although the Arthedain Knights massacring the Castellans with any luck. It's got a lot of Castellans as well, haven't they? More poison arrows flying in, lowering the morale of all of our forces. You can see they're getting shaken every time a volley hits them. That's exactly how it works. As the orcs keep you busy, the poison arrows of Camul's rangers fly in overhead, and you begin to quake. Oh, a lot of Castellans just went down to that catapult there. Oh, and more go down. But the Tharbad Royal Guard are running, and as our army dies around us, it's time to end it. So I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. I certainly have. Playing this game with all the graphics on high and a screen that can actually now output the graphics that my graphics card is trying to output is wonderful. The game looks so much better than it used to, and I hope that is coming across in the video too. We shall see. But for now, that'll be all. So thank you very much for watching, if indeed you have. And until we speak again, dear friends, Navar Naden Pedimad Melunin, and farewell.